3, 4.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Philosopheckery. Today, we have a returning guest, Professor John Pauley. John is a philosopher and Director of Interdisciplinary Studies at Simpson University, and he will talk to us about what is happening in America with their food, politically and socially, which we may find out are not unrelated. Hi, John, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, John.
Good
Thanks
evening
for
to
coming.
you, I guess.
So I guess the first question is, are you feeling liberated over there today? After Liberation Day yesterday?
I just read an article by Paul Klugman about, the title of the article was, is it malicious stupidity or something else? And he had a list of reasons for why this could tank the world economy, not just the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
So I haven't read, I literally have not read one article anywhere, Wall Street Journal, the more conservative, reasonable kinds of newspapers or so on, that says how these things are supposed to work.
Yeah. Listening to Trump yesterday, as he was rambling on, it's like he knows people are waiting for him to say something, so he's just like one of those people that doesn't give you the information you need until you've listened to all his ranting.
Yeah, right.
But
He
yeah,
never
absolutely.
says he never says anything. What he says is, okay, what the tariffs will do is bring industry back to the United States, but he doesn't say how. It's all this really simplistic thing, right? If it costs more for them, et cetera, et cetera. He does. Well, it's not really et cetera, et cetera. It's just this one sort of line. But then all the stuff underneath about the world economy, all these other really crucial things about what will establish industry back in the United States, it's all missing.
Yeah. It's like seeing a guy coming in to fix a really complicated computer, and his only tool is a hammer. It's like how you plan it to do
Right.
that.
And the hammer doesn't even work.
Yeah, and he's never used one before.
There you go. I mean, Trump really has never really done anything with respect to the U.S. economy. He and he mentions, my last term. His last term was on anyone's view. When you look at the objective evidence, he was terrible with the economy. It took Biden to fix it.
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah, I try my best to respect the conservatives. And I do have friends here in Iowa who are more conservative, people on the faculty, and they're deserting this too. They're actually, for your viewers, they might be interested that the US is, I mean, it's getting really dicey. And he might lose all of his support.
And would that, do you think? I mean, he seems to be setting up for a third term. I never thought there'd be a peaceful transfer of power after this term, but is he trying to set up some sort of coup for next time, or where? Like,
Well, you're thinking ahead of me. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, there are indications, more than just some, that he has no respect for the law. Just depends, I think, on whether or not these other Republicans in the House and the Senate can, right, finally push back. And
Yeah.
if that happens, no, he's not gonna. No, he'll be uh, he'll be thrown out.
Mm, I hope
But I
so.
don't know if it'll happen.
Neither do I, but as I've been saying to people, I think our only hope is that the American people find a way to throw him out.
Yeah,
That seems to be the only cure, or else everything is just so unpredictable because we do not know. What you said, your answer is great. I don't know because we don't know
we don't.
because we can't.
This is unprecedented
Exactly, it's
in U.S.
unprecedented.
history, so we
Um,
don't. It, you can see a clear pattern. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
hmm,
And
yeah.
and for me it started with January 6th, as the pardoning of those people. You know, if you want to establish a definite pattern, don't even go backwards. Just start there and then move forward. And he's just he doesn't care about the rule of law.
Well,
So yeah.
yeah, with that pardoning of the January Sixers, it seems to be like a setting up of a Praetorian Guard type situation where he's going to have these well armed people who are devoted to him for next time. And he has the ability to pardon people. So I worry about what happens when he's if the Americans do try and throw him out and these Praetorian Guard type style band around him. I do worry about that kind of situation. But
I do too.
and
I do too.
how
Definitely. Although the the lower middle class in the United States, and the middle class really are stand to lose a lot here. So as far as you know, he's Trump risks losing, right, rapidly, support from American citizens. I I do I think there will be a point where people see through it. This did happen with Musk recently, Tuesday in Wisconsin. And there have been town halls in Iowa with, Republican town halls. Just recently, Chuck Grassley, the senator, he has a number of positions in the Senate, and he came back to his home county to give a town hall, and he just got ripped apart. And they were talking about everything, the culture war stuff, and right, Musk running the government, buying elections and so forth. So they were going through the whole thing, and these were, this was a Republican town hall. And believe me, they're not radical liberals who have been, somehow smuggled in. That's
yeah,
not that's not what's going on.
yeah, it's very disorientating trying to get the truth. What really bugs me is that they've taken the word truth and made it truth social, and then they start saying that Trump has put out a truth, he's posted a truth, or it just kind of is a clear example how they're distorting reality.
Hmm.
You know, it's very 1984 Orwell like. It's very worrying.
Yeah, it's sickening
It is.
because it's not even interesting, because, well, it is in its overtness, because if you just take a few minutes for any of this, you can see through it. It's
Are
just
people taking the minutes, John?
I don't I know well, I have a small sample, you know around me, and those people do. And in our town, which is heavily Republican, conservative, And I would say, almost like militant MAGA. I think, when it starts hitting, when it really starts, if it starts to really hit their bottom line, the things that Americans tend to care about the most. I mean, I don't know what'll happen. The bills that are being passed in our state, it hasn't stopped. It's all the same stuff. More gun rights, stand your ground laws, taking money from public education and putting it into, private school vouchers, the complete war and attack on whatever they mean by DEI. It's that I don't think that I've written letter after letter on email, my representatives, asking them, what is it that you actually understand to be DEI? And they don't write back.
That's the very shallow style of thinking that they're copying and that they're putting out there, and I find it a lot back here too. I purposely try to talk to people that I don't agree with, that are, you could say, Trump fans or Trumpists, or think there's something good about it, and there's no depth when you take any of their slogans and say, okay, let's talk about this. It's a walk away time then. You know what I mean? So I worry about that shallowness. I blame social media for a lot of it, and the hijacking of our dopaminergic system to give us these short attention spans that only respond to 20-second videos. Um, I think,
Right, and then they say they've done their research.
yeah,
That's what kills me. Yeah, but for the DEI thing, when I was in Ireland for the 3 months, I did feel like that Irish people that I met, and it wasn't just professors, but it was also people in the agriculture and stuff. They seem to understand the economic disparity, right? Also, they seem to be amenable, or right, friendly to economic opportunity and so on. And what our local politicians, they go from DEI, they make the inference from DEI to, oh, you're hiring black people who are incompetent. But I mean, we have students here, first generation students, from rural Iowa, who are smart kids, but they need, right, they need some extra support because they have really been underprivileged in terms of education, and they also sometimes come from rougher schools, and that's part of our DEI program. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, I would like to change it to autonomy, justice, diversity, right? Diversity, equity. I'm not sure about the third one. They want to change it to, what's it called now? Excellence, merit. I forget. But I mean, diversity is one thing, but then accomplishing autonomy for the people that we call minorities now. A lot of people don't like that. We've got a long way to go. And I'm not going to stop helping students because the state representative says that it's DEI.
mm, no, it's ridiculous. The way I see that, I see myself as a beneficiary of DEI type programs. I mean, the meritocracy idea is a nonsense, as I've said other places.
It's foolish. Yes.
The coiner of the phrase wrote a book about how
Uh oh.
dystopian of an idea it was.
Um,
yesterday during Trump's rant, a lot of it was about how the EU wouldn't take American agricultural products. Any idea why that might be?
The EU won't take U.S. agricultural products? Oh, I don't know, tit for tat. I'm, I don't know how much actually of Iowa agriculture products go to the EU. I'm thinking very little.
Yeah, I think we don't take a lot of American or any American agricultural products because our regulations over here don't allow us to put a lot of the stuff in the food that gets put in the food over there,
Right.
and seems problematic. And in your work, you mentioned that Iowa has the second highest cancer rate in America.
Yeah. And this has been the case since, anyway, I went back to CDC statistics to 2017. It's basically been the same. I think we're number one. We're number two in new cases percentage of the population, and then we're the rate of increase. I think we're number one. I'd have to check that, but yeah, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, either way, it is a kind of alarming. But you see, this is what I'm complaining about this in the paper I'm writing, that you know it's one thing for citizens to say, oh, look, in 2025 we have this cancer problem, but actually we've had this problem since at least 2015 or so. So and nothing's happened. I mean, nothing really has happened. I mean, there's stuff that comes out about. I'm combing the research here, and there's stuff that's coming out about alcohol. That seems to me to be the current, sort of the current causality that people are latching onto. And if you look at the cancer reports, there's one every year, and environmental factors are just they're the last thing mentioned. And at the top of that list is radon. And it's
Okay.
just, and then you start looking into more of it, and I have, and atrazine, which is a chemical is 60 to 80 million pounds of it is used in the United States, and in Iowa it's a common. They dump a lot of it, spray a lot of it. It was banned in the EU in 2003. The reasoning on the part of the EU was it it is impossible to keep atrazine out of the water. And since research has shown a statistical correlation between atrazine and colon cancer, and colon cancer for sure. I don't want to do anything off the top of my head. And Iowa has seen a rise in colon cancer.
Well, and you say it's mentioned last, but is it also looked at last? As in, are they even looking at our environmental
Well,
factors much?
I mean, I think some people are, but I'm not sure in the state, because the state is dominated by big agriculture and industry interests. I mean, it really is. And here I wanted to, instead of going into all these details about this stuff, I wanted to hook on to the things that you've been mentioning and the stuff you've been talking about. This, what people are talking about with respect to authoritarianism, a lot of it just comes right down to profits. So you've got people in the state legislature, protecting Iowa agriculture. But they're invested. You can't deny that people in the state legislature actually have farms. They're in the business. So I really think the authoritarianism in this state, and it's definitely authoritarianism, trying to get your voice heard. It's really hard. This is due to a small number of people making a lot of money. The lobby for big agriculture is bigger than the lobby and more powerful than the big oil lobby.
Wow. And
So
what about?
sometimes it just comes right back down to good old American greed.
Mhm. Yeah. And what about institutions like the FDA and this? Would they not have some say, or are they corrupted? Or
I don't know if they're corrupted, but they've been gutted, and Trump is in the process of. I think he's already done it. He's gutted the EPA, and he's also he is repealing or getting rid of. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the right word. Regulations, but I mean, to use an example with respect to nitrates, the EPA guideline is like 0.10 milligrams per something, and then you look at what people in the research recommend, it's lower. So an industry clearly, right? That's part of what their lobby does. So they will say, well, we have these regulations in place. This is what the EPA has said. But the EPA is getting considerable pressure from lobbies. And now they have, right, basically they have the federal government on their side. And
yeah,
nitrates in the Iowa drinking water, since the turn of the century, have been going up, and no one's really doing anything to reduce them. And there's no controversy about nitrates; they're carcinogens. They get uh, they undergo change in the human mouth, and they become nitrites. They're carcinogenic. There's no doubt about it.
and this problem preceded Trump too. Uh, so is it a social problem? Does it, like,
Definitely, I
when
think
we
so.
had, like, why didn't Barack Obama do something about it? Basically,
Well, Barack Obama would have to face up to that powerful, incredibly powerful lobby, and then also have to face up and come to some realization about the common myths of United States agriculture, feeding the world, because that's what they say, and that in this state, farming is, it the identity of the state is wrapped up in farming. Farming went through a transformation that most people don't really understand. And consequently, when you attack, I've got some very recent editorials from U.S. Senator Joni Ernst, she's a defender of all big agriculture, where it's like, don't support our farmers, support the good old farmer. Really, I mean, what she's talking about now is good old industry.
mm. support our
So
stock price.
you got to cut down through a bunch of, seriously stuff that, and this is why I think philosophy is so important here, is because, to do some cultural philosophy and right, try to understand what how all these voices are interacting is crucial, right? And also setting up kinds of rules for discussion, rules for, like, not literally, but in the background, what you can really criticize and what you can't. And I think that's being reinforced now from at the federal level. That's the authoritarianism. You can't. I mean, how do you defend DEI now? It's it's being wiped out. And if you defend it, you run the risk of losing funding. That's what's happening, and that's what's happening with DEI, because we're a private college, but we also get state funds, right? It's called the Iowa Tuition Grant. Something like 40% of our students have it. And what the state legislature did was they said, look, if you continue with the DEI stuff, we're going to cut off that tuition grant.
But they won't even give you a clear version of what that DEI stuff is.
No,
It's
they
just,
they don't. I mean, it right now in the state, it's for us, it's DEI offices. So if you have a DEI officer, you got to get rid of that person. You got to get rid of that office, and so on. And we're calling it now community and belonging or something like that. But I don't like charades. I
yeah.
personally don't like the idea of trying to, right, do something, like, continue to do the same thing, right, under the threat, while recognizing the threat from the government. I would rather just, like, push back hard. Like, but there you're like, okay, if we push back hard, we'll lose funding.
Yeah.
And that's not good. That won't be good for students.
No, well, it won't be good for anybody. It won't be good for the future.
Yeah.
You know, it really won't. And how much of this do you think is is just racism? I mean, I seen that Trump is finally willing to take a load of refugees from Africa,
I didn't see that.
but it's only one particular place, South Africa, and it's only white people.
Okay.
I mean, that's
How
kind
bizarre.
of obvious. Uh,
I'd like
like
to
the
read about that. I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, and that's probably because he's buddies with Musk, And I hear there's horrible things happening to white farmers in South Africa, and they should be helped. But there's plenty of other people in Africa that need help too, and I'm not sure why he's just choosing these ones. Well, I
Yeah.
am sure it's because the color of the
Coming
skin.
into the, you know, is it, I mean, I think it's probably the case that ignoring American history with respect to um, prejudice, bigotry, etc., is itself racism. So, insofar as you just, I that history doesn't really appeal to me. I don't think that history is is something we should be teaching because it makes people feel bad or whatever, idiotic argument they
Yeah,
have. It's not. That's racism itself.
yeah, and it pushes back against their own fact versus feelings kind of thing too. Suddenly they're very snowflake like, aren't they? They they
They are.
really
They're really. Actually, I know somebody who has a kid who's like has short discussion. Is like, yeah, they weren't feeling good about the narrative of racist America. It's like, well, I mean, sorry, but You know, you can't avoid that unless you want to
Yeah,
be an ignoramus.
yeah, and it's important to move forward and to understand it. But do you think how can I put this? Do you think the left did go too far in some ways? Do you think that like I somehow think that in all the arguments, people get pushed to extreme ideologies. And I
Yeah,
think there was elements of the left that were extreme and they were kind of an easy target because of that. And then that became what the left was this most extreme, at least from the perspective of the right and the slogan slingers, you know.
yeah,
So I wonder what you think about that.
I do agree with that. I I guess I anecdotally, I can say that for our offices, we were supposed to have, well, there was a lot of pressure to have these safe space signs, and I resisted that. And I also never did the pronouns. I think because, well, I would respect people's in class and so on. Their if they told me that their pronoun was such and such, that's fine. But like forcing everyone to have it on their email, I think what that did, even if it's a good idea, I think what that did was it set up the left for mockery. I mean, the right had an easy time with that one, really easy. And then a lot of people, right? Certainly, a lot of citizens, they do not understand transgender. They there's a lot of stuff they just don't understand, and it then becomes easy for them to mock it. And then that, I mean, actually, that puts people's lives in danger, which is, tragic. But and also the left would, they did some language policing. It was easy for the people on the right to latch onto that.
Yeah, it was. I think compelled speech was and always is going to be wrong, no matter which side you're on. I don't think free speech is important. Of course, it needs to have limits, and but compelled speech is something different, and I don't think that should ever be done. Uh, yeah, I think I've always thought that, and I think I've mostly resisted it. But like yourself, I always have respect, and I always made the argument you have to respect everybody. I don't think that's a. I mean, my one rule in life is always just don't be an asshole. That's if it, I
It's a good
doubt
rule.
I've, I doubt I've managed it all the time, but
Yeah.
it seems to be a nice simple rule to hold on to. So
I don't, I have rules, in introductory. It only will come up like in an introductory class and not very often, but, there's no racial slurs, nothing that would like potentially harm another student or make them sense that they're not welcome or I think you have to be on your guard for stuff like that and rule it out.
yeah,
I'm more. I think I'm more friendly to the hate speech laws than a lot of Americans. Those words do considerable damage.
yeah, they do.
And you hear them quite a bit.
Mm. There's there's hate speech laws now over here, and there's people being arrested for putting things up on online and stuff like that. And it's hard to talk to people when they're shouting at you about free speech. That but that speech was never that free. You were never allowed to incite hatred. I mean, you
Right,
look through constitutions, it's not just an absolute free speech, have at it, say what you want. There's always been limits to this.
right.
Um,
Again, a reasonable person.
a reasonable
I think
person.
a reasonable person can agree that there need to be guidelines to, for the possibility of conversation. I can't go in and teach a class and talk about economic disparity if there's some person in the class, you know, spouting racial slurs, which doesn't happen here. It really doesn't. But you know, anyone who would try doing that would know, right, that these rules, they're there, and so I productive conversation, reasonable people conducting productive conversation for the education of young people. We need those kinds of boundaries.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that kind of brings me to another point I wanted to ask you about, and I've been wondering myself recently. Is logic and reasoning winning against comedy and foolishness? I'm not sure it is. I feel like reasonable people in the rooms are often being put down by the slogan slingers and not heard. And it's the same online, I think, and the same in a lot of places. I went up to the university last week or the week before for a talk about Trump and Europe. And I agreed with everything that was said. And there was very good speakers up there saying very insightful things. But I don't think anybody in the room disagreed. And I wondered at the end, are we all in the wrong room? Where's, I mean, we're just, it is, I agree with everything, but it is a type of echo chamber, and we can all pat each other on the back, but have we really communicated anything to anybody that needs to hear it? I'm not so sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, right. That presents a real dilemma, which is how are you going to address? I've been doing community research with students, and we've worked on water quality, and we're doing stuff now on mental health awareness. And when I talk to when I talk to some people, right, they might nod their head and so on, but I get the sense like we're not really having a conversation. And I'm not sure what it would take to have that conversation. Is it just two extremes, right? With yeah, see, but that's the other thing is like, what's extreme? My sense of it is that in the United States is that anything that's progressive is extreme now. So you can't be for certain things and not be an extremist. And some of those things have to do with or stand in opposition to what some people on the other side are talking about with respect to meritocracy. So you've got all of these underlying things that have to literally be pulled out, in order to have that conversation that you're talking about.
yeah.
And you know, if someone could spell out the context for that, I'd be really happy.
Yeah, I think it's something we're going to have to work on and work towards. I worry about this is going to sound strange. I worry about optimism and hope these days sometimes because I see a lot of people who I think their optimism and hope is just not a correct appreciation of the reality that we find ourselves in. And there's still a bit of it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm like, it's clearly not fine. and they seem so hopeful that they seem detached to me from what's going on. Do you find that over there with people?
I think so. I think what we need is determination.
Yes.
And um, like I'm one person who won't, under no condition, none, will I give up.
Same here.
And I know other people who are the same way. And I'm also not going to give up on, people who identify themselves as MAGA. I'm not going to do that because I think I know the power of propaganda. But at the same time, I've got to avoid being what's the word, perceived immediately as an elitist, kind of a know-it-all. So again, we got the difficulty of engagement.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people I go down to the Friday afternoon, I go down to the pub, and I see people from town, and I have nice conversations with them, just not about politics.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. Uh, Somebody once explained to me the difference between hope and optimism, which I really like. He said, optimism is something you work towards. I
Yeah,
thought that's good. So I try
that is
to.
good. Yeah,
So my optimism, I only allow myself to be optimistic if I'm actually working towards that goal in some way. Otherwise, I see optimism as and hopefulness as dangerous in some extent. Um, there seems to be a move towards anti-science, anti-expert, anti-academic, anti-intellectual. I'm
definitely,
finding that here. Are you finding that over there too?
absolutely, and it's deeply worrisome.
Yes, very much so, because this has happened in other parts of history and the Russian Revolution.
Exactly. Right. They don't, because those people can point out, where these authoritarians have simply gone wrong.
Absolutely.
And I mean, this administration, if you want to, like, if someone really wants to go on a rant about this, I mean, RFK Jr., as the director of Health and Human Services, is literally a clown show. He knows nothing about disease, epidemic. You can see with the way he's handling the measles epidemic. I don't know if you all have heard about that in Europe, but we have
Something about peach pits.
we've had a fairly serious outbreak of measles in the Southwest, Texas, and it spilled into some other states. I think as last time I saw 500 cases, and it's clear that the epidemic can be, the causality there is a lack of vaccination. And here you have again, right, the problem with people just sort of disregarding experts or thinking they're some sort of like they're working on some kind of conspiracy.
Yeah.
That like Fauci, people in the United States, some people in the United States wanted to bring him up on criminal charges for his medical response to the COVID epidemic.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy ideas out there, all right. And I
Yeah,
think when it comes to COVID, I think there was a lot of mistakes made. I think we largely overreacted to it, but if we had to do it all again, I don't think we'd do it like that.
right.
But at the same time, when situations like this are live, people are making decisions off the fly. It's
I don't want to make light of. I definitely don't want to make light of the COVID disease, but let's see, I would have been, I'm 64 now. I think I was 60. And I literally had this sense that for a bit that if I got COVID, I might have to go to the hospital, and, it was like a cold. And the vast majority of the people I knew, that's what it was. That's really what it was like. And to have a kind of balanced approach where you really get it across to people that, look, if you're healthy, right, you're the likelihood of really, becoming desperately ill is really low, like it would be with influenza.
Yeah. But I think most people's fear, including my own, came from I was fairly young and reasonably healthy, and I thought, okay, I can get it and I'll take it, and I think I'll be fine. What if I give it to my mother or some
Right,
other person, and then I'll
right,
be responsible? And
right.
that's where the real fear
That's
came
why
in.
I had the shots.
Mm,
Didn't always get the flu vaccine. I get it now, but you're right. That's part of being a responsible person.
yeah,
And so, this whole thing about public health and anti-vaccine, this is insanity on the moral level and also on the political level. You just, public health is our responsibility.
yeah,
And oh, I'm not going to get vaccinated. Well, why not? I don't believe in it. Meanwhile, you can infect
yeah.
someone and kill them.
And I think people expect perfection from these things, and when they find little holes in the system or where that didn't go wrong or little examples, then they get magnified and blown out of proportion, and then see it's all corrupt, or it's all this or it's all that. It's like nobody promised perfection, nobody promised utopia. Yeah, as you said, you have to be a reasonable person and understand. It's
Yeah.
that's
Well, and measles is the measles, mumps, diphtheria vaccine really does, if you get that vaccine when you're a kid and you get a booster, chances are you won't even get any you just won't get measles. That's all there is to it. And measles is a really unpleasant and sometimes fatal disease.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's killed many people.
It's killed millions of people.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess, yeah, no, I'm not going to argue against vaccines. I think vaccines are great. I was going to try and take the devil's perspective there for a moment, but I won't. It's,
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's that maybe if we controlled the context of the discussion to, should I have my children vaccinated, you know, before they go to school, which was when I was a kid, that was the rule. And there really weren't exemptions. And now there's like the religious exemptions. What? I mean, you know, I
yeah,
I'm trying to figure that one out. Like, I haven't looked at it, but I mean, what would that be? I mean, maybe Jehovah's Witness or something, but
I don't know. Maybe it's this new Jedi religion. Maybe they're not into it.
it's in Matthew.
Yeah,
Thou shalt not. Whatever.
yeah, yeah. Look, John, I know your time is limited, and it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it, and hopefully, in another few months, when you've had your real revolution and taken down Trump, we can have another chat. Uh,
It'd be great. I really enjoy it. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
fun.
yeah. I enjoy it too, John. I enjoy it too. So, okay, all the listeners, thanks for listening, and join us again sometime. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
3, 4.